In 1961, a young man referred to only as patient number 18 sat down in front of a camera for a psychiatric interview that was never intended for public consumption. The footage was produced as part of a teaching series for a department of psychiatry at a school of medicine, clinical material designed to help students understand and recognize the presentation of certain conditions, not something made with any awareness that it would eventually find its way onto the internet and be watched by millions of people who had no connection to the field of psychiatry and no context beyond what the footage itself provided. What the camera recorded across that interview is deeply uncomfortable to watch, and the discomfort has nothing to do with anything dramatic or graphic. It comes from something much quieter and much harder to look away from. The experience of watching another human being struggle to move through a simple conversation in a way that makes the distance between his internal world and the world the interviewer is trying to reach him from feel enormous and uncrossable. From the very beginning of the footage, something registers as different about patient number 18. He barely moves. His head turns only slightly when the questions come, and the stillness of his body has a quality that isn't simply calm. It is the particular stillness of someone who is expending effort just to hold themselves in the frame of the interaction. When answers come, they come after long pauses, his eyes moving during those silences in a way that suggests he is genuinely searching for what to say, rather than withholding it, as if the words are somewhere outside him and he has to locate them before they can be spoken. This phenomenon, which psychiatry refers to as thought blocking, was a recognized feature of the condition, then classified as catatonic schizophrenia, one of several subtypes that the field used at the time to categorize presentations that are now understood with considerably more nuance and complexity. The questions the interviewer asks are simple. How long have you been here? What brought you here? What is it you're trying to do with your life? Patient number 18 answers them with responses that are technically coherent and yet produce the feeling of someone speaking from a very long distance away. He has been there 3 months. The psychiatrist decided this situation was appropriate for him. He is not completely like other people, he says. And when the interviewer asks him to elaborate, he explains that people dislike him because he is not completely like them. He wants to play the piano for people. He sits differently at the piano than he does away from it. And this difference in how he appears has caused people to dislike him, including his father, including the doctors. The interview becomes increasingly difficult to follow as it continues, not because patient number 18 is being evasive, but because the connections he is making between ideas follow a logic that doesn't map cleanly onto the conversational framework the interviewer is trying to maintain. When he attempts to explain the relationship between playing the piano and ending up in the hospital, the explanation grows more intricate and more tangled with each sentence, until he arrives at a point where he simply says this is becoming too involved to describe. And then the most heartbreaking moment in the footage arrives. He articulates clearly and without any apparent confusion that he does not believe he belongs in the hospital, and that when he expresses this belief, the people who dislike him use it as a reason to find a worse place for him. The interviewer asks him to clarify. He says no. The exchange ends there. Patient number 18 was never identified by name in the footage or in any material connected to it, and what happened to him after that interview remained unknown to anyone watching the clip, until a comment appeared beneath one of the re-uploaded versions that stood out from everything else in the thread by virtue of how specific and how quietly devastating it was. The commenter identified themselves as a nephew of the man in the footage. They said they weren't going to provide names, but that for anyone who had been watching and wondering how things had turned out for him, the answer was not well. He had spent the better part of 40 years in institutions. The medication he was receiving at the time of the interview kept some of the worst of his condition at bay, but without it, his state ranged between full delusion and complete catatonia. His family had spent decades trying to make his existence somewhat peaceful, and the piano, the one thing he had described wanting to do with his life, had never materialized. The obsession with it came and went over the years, replaced and returned by obsessions with religion and government that cycled through in the same way. In the late 1980s, he died by his own hand through a drug overdose. The commenter closed by saying they hoped the other members of their family would never see the video, largely because of the comments from people who believed they understood him better than the people who had actually lived alongside his illness and carried the weight of it for decades. They said they couldn't begin to convey how heartbreaking the whole thing had been. Whether that comment came from someone genuinely connected to patient number 18 or from a stranger constructing a story in a comment section is something that cannot be confirmed. But the specificity of it, the absence of any dramatic flourish, and the particular exhaustion audible in every line of it make it very difficult to read as fiction. It sits beneath footage of a young man in 1961 who wanted to play the piano for people, and it describes what the rest of his life looked like after that camera stopped rolling. Whatever piece patient number 18 found or didn't find in the decades between that interview and the end of his life, the footage that was filmed to teach psychiatry students about a condition has become something else entirely in the years since it surfaced online. A document of a person who was struggling in a room with a camera, trying to explain something he couldn't quite reach the words for, and who never got the life he described wanting when someone finally asked him what he was trying to do with it. The nightly banging eventually stopped, but the mystery never did. Whether the neighbor was sleepwalking, suffering from a medical condition, or hiding something else entirely remains unknown. But as strange as that was, the next case is even harder to explain, because this time someone wanted to be seen, without ever revealing who they really were. On July 4th, 1998, a group of young men in Nevada came across an abandoned mine and made the decision that a significant number of people make when they come across a place that has been closed off and left to itself for decades. They went in anyway. The warning signs were there before they even crossed the threshold, posted clearly enough that one of them read it aloud on camera: "Stay out, stay alive." He acknowledged it, acknowledged that they weren't particularly smart, and they went in anyway.
Zebra is pointing out, stay alive. It's a good point, but we're not too smart, so we're going to go anyway.
This is an unsafe mine. Danger.
The temptation of somewhere untouched, somewhere that felt like a discovery rather than a destination, was stronger than anything the sign had to say about it. What followed was documented on camera from the beginning, which is how the footage that has circulated since exists at all. A group of teenagers with no safety equipment, no experience in mine exploration, and no particular plan beyond going further than they had gone before, recording everything as they pushed deeper into tunnels that had been sealed off for reasons that became clearer with every step they took. The conditions inside deteriorated the further they went. Wooden planks spanned open shafts that dropped away into darkness below them, and the ceiling of the tunnels had already shed enough material to cover sections of the floor with fallen rock. One of them noted this out loud, looked at the debris, concluded that because those rocks had already fallen, they probably weren't going to fall again, and received a correction from someone nearby that there was still plenty more above them waiting to come down.
There's lots of rocks and stuff that have fallen from the ceiling, which indicates that probably a good idea to be walking this way. And,
well, they've already fallen, so they're not going to fall again.
Well, there's more to fall still.
They kept moving. The tunnels branched and twisted, some passages marked with painted symbols that none of them could interpret with any confidence, others descending into shafts that the camera couldn't find the bottom of. Every direction they considered carried a different version of the same risk: disorientation in a maze of passages with no reliable way back, a sudden drop through compromised flooring, or the silent presence of gases that old mines accumulate and that give no warning before they overwhelm the people breathing them. By some combination of luck and the particular confidence that comes with being young enough not to fully imagine the consequences, they navigated through all of that and reached a section that presented them with something their curiosity immediately responded to: a rope hanging from an old wooden beam, disappearing into the darkness of a vertical shaft below. They gathered around it, looked down into the dark, and began discussing going further. A young man named Adam volunteered to go first. He began his descent on a rope that had been hanging in that shaft for an unknown number of years, exposed to the moisture and the weight of time, in the way that abandoned equipment in abandoned places always is. It held him for a brief period, long enough for him to commit his full weight to it and begin moving downward. Then it snapped. Adam fell approximately 65 feet into the shaft below, striking the sides of the tunnel as he dropped, before landing in the darkness at the bottom. His friends above him called his name into the dark and heard nothing back for a period that must have felt considerably longer than it was.
Climbed ropes before.
And
There's a little ledge you can rest on.
how far down does it go?
All the way down to that ladder. See where it's laying down?
Where the
Like, like a good 30 feet.
Where the am I gonna hook this
I'll go
camera?
first. I go first. About 600 feet.
You don't like to break up. Put it like he's doing it into your mouth. Bad. I don't like this. Is it off now?
No, it's not. How am I gonna get this thing down there? Yeah, but how am I gonna get back up?
It looks sturdy. How's it not?
I don't have a
Take good. Give you my belt. Strap it on.
Adam!
Oh, Adam.
Oh,
Adam.
yes.
Adam.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Somebody help.
Adam.
He was still breathing when they managed to assess the situation, which was the only mercy available in what had just happened. And it was a mercy that had no particular reason to exist, given the distance he had fallen and the surfaces he had made contact with on the way down. His friends found a way out and reached the surface to alert emergency services. A rescue effort that lasted roughly an hour brought Adam back up from the shaft and to the medical care he needed. He survived with broken bones, cuts, and bruises, injuries serious enough to require treatment and significant enough to serve as lasting physical reminders of how close the outcome had come to being something that couldn't be walked away from. The shaft could have been deeper. The head injuries he sustained on the way down could have been fatal rather than survivable, and if the rope had failed while someone else was already descending, the group above might have found themselves trapped in a mine with no way to call for help and no one on the surface who knew where they were. None of those things happened, and Adam came home, but the footage of the moments before the rope gave way, the casual discussion about how to get back up, the jokes about America's funniest home videos, the complete absence of any real reckoning with what they were actually doing, is the part of the recording that stays with you longest afterward. Not because of anything that was said, but because of how ordinary it all sounds in the seconds before everything changed. Some places are abandoned for a reason. That mine had made its position on the matter as clear as a posted sign could make it before they ever crossed inside. Police eventually ruled it a prank, but they never discovered who was behind it or why they went to such extraordinary lengths. The next encounter is even more unsettling because it doesn't begin with a person at all. It begins with something that shouldn't have been there. This footage comes from a TikTok user going by Brody22, whose account is normally about nothing more dramatic than mountain biking trips through forest trails with friends, the kind of channel built around scenery and ride footage rather than conflict or confrontation. What started as one more ordinary ride out with the group turned into something else entirely once they hit a narrow bridge crossing over a river. The bridge itself is what set the whole encounter in motion. It was tight enough, with little room to maneuver around anyone coming from the other direction, and that's exactly the spot where an unidentified man approached them. There was no easy way to just ride past him or turn back quickly to avoid the interaction altogether. The layout of the crossing put them in a position where they had to actually deal with whoever this was, whether they wanted to or not. At first, it played out like a completely unremarkable exchange. The kind of small talk that happens between strangers who cross paths outdoors, a few casual comments back and forth about nothing in particular, but it shifted fast.
Oh, dude. Yo.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean it, eh? I mean, like, if you're making fences, like, might as well make them nice. Nice fences are nice. And you guys have got the spot. I like it, guys. Good.
Without any clear trigger that the group could identify, the man's tone changed, and what had been a passing conversation turned into something tense and confrontational. The cyclist's reactions throughout make clear they had no idea what had set him off. There's a genuine confusion running underneath their responses, the sense of people trying to figure out what they possibly could have said or done to provoke this shift. From there, the group works hard to keep things from escalating. They apologize repeatedly, insist over and over that they aren't looking for trouble, and try to explain themselves in whatever way might calm him down. For a moment, it seems to work, and the group appears to believe the tension has passed. That relief doesn't last. Just moments later, the man comes back and picks the confrontation back up, seemingly unwilling to actually let it end. What follows is a stretch of the video that many viewers have pointed to as the most unnerving part of the whole encounter. He references bikes ending up in the river, brings up physical challenges, asks if they want to fight or swim with him, and swings unpredictably between aggression and something closer to menace, disguised as casual conversation. The cyclists, for their part, stay remarkably composed under the pressure, continuing to apologize, agreeing with nearly everything he says, clearly trying to diffuse a situation they have no way of controlling. At one point, he even brings up his own age, almost as if trying to justify holding back from actually following through on anything physical. What makes the footage so unsettling isn't a single dramatic moment, it's the sustained uncertainty running through the whole thing. Nobody in that group could know in real time whether this man actually intended to hurt them or whether this was simply erratic, unpredictable behavior that would eventually burn itself out. Near the end, he pivots suddenly to warning them about a cougar supposedly seen in the area, an abrupt subject change that does nothing to ease the tension, only adding another layer of unpredictability to an already volatile situation. The video ends abruptly right there, with no resolution and no indication of how the encounter actually wrapped up. No follow-up video was ever posted, and nothing further about the man or what caused his outburst has surfaced since. All that's left is the recording itself, and everyone watching left with the same question the cyclists were clearly asking themselves in the moment: what was actually going on with him, and how close things really came to going a different way. Before we move on, if you're enjoying these real disturbing videos, make sure to subscribe. We spend hours researching the internet for the creepiest and most mysterious footage so you don't have to. And trust me, the next 3 cases only get more disturbing. Ancient buildings have always been surrounded by stories of unexplained encounters, but the next video proves you don't need to visit a centuries-old cathedral to experience something terrifying. Sometimes, the creepiest moments happen in the one place you're supposed to feel safest: your own home. A traffic stop in Linwood, California, has drawn widespread attention after a video appeared to show a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy using force against a driver. The footage, which circulated widely on social media, captured a physical confrontation that quickly escalated from a routine traffic stop. The incident has prompted an internal investigation into both the deputy's use of force and the department's policies. The encounter involved Jesus Medina, who was driving the vehicle, and his brother, Omar Medina, who recorded the incident. According to the family, deputies stopped the vehicle for traffic-related violations, including tinted windows and expired registration. The stop took place near a 7-Eleven in Linwood during the afternoon. The video begins after the interaction had already started. According to Omar Medina, the deputy had already attempted to open the driver's door before recording began. The footage shows a lengthy exchange between the deputy and the driver as tensions gradually increased. During the encounter, Jesus Medina questioned the deputy's actions and requested that a supervisor respond to the scene. As the situation continued, the deputy repeatedly reached inside the vehicle while the driver remained seated. The driver attempted to prevent the deputy from opening the door and later tried to close the vehicle's window. The deputy warned against doing so and continued trying to gain control of the situation. The confrontation intensified when the deputy opened the driver's door and attempted to remove Jesus Medina from the vehicle. Video footage shows the deputy grabbing the driver before delivering several punches while trying to pull him from the car. The struggle continued as another deputy arrived to assist with the arrest. A female deputy joined the incident and helped remove the driver from the vehicle. Both deputies worked to restrain him on the ground before placing him in handcuffs. The physical confrontation lasted several moments before additional deputies arrived at the scene. The video shared online does not capture the entire incident. According to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, events occurred outside the camera's view that are also part of the investigation. Authorities stated that the female deputy was allegedly kicked during the struggle. Officials said she suffered a broken arm after falling during the incident and required medical treatment. Sheriff Alex Villanueva acknowledged public concerns after reviewing the available footage. He stated that the incident raised important questions about both the deputy's use of force and the injuries sustained by the female deputy. He confirmed that investigators would examine every aspect of the confrontation before reaching conclusions. The Sheriff's Department launched separate investigations into the incident. One investigation focuses on the criminal allegations against those involved, while another reviews whether department policies regarding the use of force were properly followed. Officials said both investigations remain active. Captain Kerry Carter later confirmed that the deputy seen in the video had been reassigned while the investigation continued. The deputy also underwent additional training as part of the department's response. Officials stressed that reassignment does not determine the outcome of the investigation, but allows the review process to continue. Authorities also confirmed that the deputies involved were not equipped with body-worn cameras during the traffic stop. As a result, investigators are relying on cell phone footage, witness statements, and other available evidence to reconstruct the full sequence of events. Department officials noted that body camera footage could have provided additional context during the review. Following the incident, Jesus Medina was arrested on several charges, including assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, resisting arrest, and driving without a valid license. Authorities stated that the publicly released video does not show the alleged assault on the female deputy that forms part of the criminal investigation. Other occupants of the vehicle also faced legal action. One passenger was arrested for failing to comply with a lawful order, while another was arrested on suspicion of possession of methamphetamine for sale. Officials said investigators are reviewing the actions of everyone involved before completing the case. The incident has renewed discussion about police accountability and transparency during traffic stops. Civil rights advocates have argued that videos recorded by the public often show only part of an encounter, while law enforcement agencies maintain that complete investigations are necessary before determining whether policies were followed. The case has also brought renewed attention to the use of body-worn cameras within the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Villanueva said the incident demonstrated the importance of expanding body camera programs to improve transparency and provide a more complete record of critical incidents. Department officials have previously cited funding challenges as one reason cameras were not widely available at the time. Public reaction to the video has remained divided. Some viewers expressed concern over the level of force shown in the footage, while others noted that investigators must consider all available evidence before reaching conclusions. The Sheriff's Department has urged the public to allow the investigative process to continue. Investigators are reviewing the cell phone recording alongside witness interviews, official reports, and physical evidence collected from the scene. The findings will determine whether departmental policies were followed and whether any additional administrative or disciplinary action is necessary. The investigation into the Linwood traffic stop remains ongoing. Officials have not announced when the review will be completed. Until then, authorities continue examining the circumstances surrounding the confrontation to determine the full sequence of events and whether the deputy's actions complied with department standards. Whether that was paranormal activity or something with a perfectly ordinary explanation is impossible to say. But unlike that man, the next person deliberately walked into a place that most people would avoid after dark and almost immediately wished he hadn't. On February 9, 2004, at roughly 3:15 in the afternoon, a young woman named Mora Murray walked up to an ATM and withdrew $280 in cash. A nearby surveillance camera caught her for only a few seconds. Grainy, unremarkable footage of someone doing something completely ordinary. Nobody watching that camera feed in real time had any reason to think twice about it. Today, that handful of seconds is treated as something else entirely, the last confirmed footage anyone has of Mora Murray before she vanished without a trace. Roughly 4 hours after that withdrawal, witnesses reported seeing her near a car that had gone off the road, damaged badly enough that it could no longer be driven. A local school bus driver, spotting the wreck, pulled over to check if she needed help. She told him she'd already called for roadside assistance and was simply waiting for it to arrive. It was a reasonable, believable answer, except it wasn't true. No such call was ever made. The driver left, but something about the exchange didn't sit right with him. Rather than shrugging it off, he decided to contact the police himself and report what he'd seen. When officers arrived at the scene roughly 20 minutes later, they found the crashed vehicle exactly where it had been left, along with some of Mora's belongings still inside. Mora herself was gone. Her cell phone and bank cards had vanished along with her, nowhere to be found at the scene or anywhere else afterwards. That's the exact point where the trail goes cold, and it has stayed cold for over 2 decades. Nobody has ever been able to establish why she left her car in the first place, where she went once she stepped away from it, or what happened to her in the hours and days that followed. Her bank cards were never used again after that ATM withdrawal. Her phone never so much as pinged a tower. Despite extensive searches across the surrounding area in the days and weeks after her disappearance, investigators came away with nothing that pointed clearly in any direction. What's kept the case alive in public conversation for over 20 years isn't just the disappearance itself, but the pieces of context that surround it without ever fully explaining it. Mora had told her employer she'd be absent that day and had reportedly mentioned some difficulties going on in her personal life around that same time. Investigators looked hard at whether those details connected meaningfully to her disappearance and never reached a conclusive answer either way. Over time, the case grew into one of the more widely discussed unsolved disappearances of the early 2000s, discussed and rediscussed across message boards, podcasts, and documentaries, with theories ranging from the mundane to the deeply unsettling. Adding to the frustration for anyone trying to piece the case together, most of the original footage showing Mora in the time leading up to her disappearance was eventually lost, leaving investigators and researchers with less to work from as the years went on rather than more. Then, nearly 12 years after she vanished, something new surfaced. A short video titled "Where I Put Mora" appeared on YouTube, showing nothing more than an abandoned shed sitting deep in the woods. There's no narration on camera, no face ever shown. Throughout the clip, laughter can be heard from someone off-screen, unidentified, while a photograph of Mora Murray is held up in front of the lens. The person who uploaded it was never identified. Despite extensive attempts by both investigators and amateur internet sleuths, nobody was ever able to pin down the actual location of the shed shown in the footage, and no clear connection to Mora's case was ever confirmed. Opinions on that video split sharply, and still do. Some see it as exactly what it looks like on the surface, a cruel, opportunistic hoax designed to draw attention to a case that already had plenty of public interest, made by someone with no real connection to what actually happened to Mora at all. Others aren't convinced that explanation covers everything about it, pointing to the specificity of the photograph and the deliberate, unsettling nature of the laughter as details that feel too pointed to be a random prank. More than 20 years later, none of it has ever been resolved. Mora Murray has never been found, her case remains open, and the video that resurfaced nearly a decade after her disappearance has never been definitively explained, connected, or dismissed, leaving both her family and everyone who's followed the case since with exactly the same unanswered questions that existed the moment that school bus driver decided to make a phone call. At least he had the chance to run. The final case is different. The encounter lasts only a few seconds, yet even after thousands of people analyzed the footage frame by frame, nobody could agree on what was actually standing beside that lonely highway. And if you thought everything you've seen so far had a possible explanation, this final video might change your mind. August 2020 should have been a good day for hiking. The creator behind the YouTube channel, Faith with Frankie, set out with a small group for Brooks Falls in Katmai National Park, one of those trails people plan trips around for the scenery alone, the kind of remote, wild landscape that photographs beautifully and, on paper, promises nothing more dangerous than sore legs by the end of the day. Nobody in that group left the trailhead expecting the walk to turn into a survival story. The first sign of trouble came without much warning. 2 large brown bears appeared directly ahead of them on the trail, close enough that there was no mistaking the situation for a distant sighting worth a quick photo and nothing more. This was immediate, and it was real. The group's instincts kicked in fast, voices dropping into that careful, controlled tone people use when they know panic is the one thing they absolutely cannot afford, calling out calmly to the bears while starting to back away, doing everything right according to every piece of advice anyone's ever heard about encountering brown bears in the wild. Don't run, don't turn your back completely, give them space, make your presence known without making yourself a threat.
Let's get back.
Hi there.
Just back up. Just back up.
Hi there.
That alone would have been enough of a story on its own. But it's what happened next that turned this from a tense wildlife encounter into something genuinely terrifying. While the group was entirely focused on the 2 bears in front of them, carefully managing that threat, none of them had noticed that a 3rd brown bear had come up from behind. By the time someone in the group spotted it, they weren't just dealing with 2 bears blocking the trail ahead. They were surrounded, 2 animals in front and one now positioned directly behind them, with nowhere obvious to retreat to that didn't put them closer to one bear or another. The next few seconds capture exactly the kind of controlled fear that defines this footage. There's no screaming, no chaos, nothing that resembles the panicked scrambling you might expect from a group realizing they're boxed in by 3 apex predators. Instead, there's a kind of grim, focused calm, someone in the group immediately scanning for any possible route out, spotting an open meadow to one side that might offer them somewhere to move that wasn't directly toward any of the 3 animals. Voices stay measured even as the situation gets more dangerous by the second, everyone working together to identify an escape path without making any sudden movement that could turn a tense standoff into something much worse. What makes the footage so gripping isn't dramatic bear behavior or a chase, it's the sheer logistics of the danger itself. Being caught between 1 brown bear is already a serious, potentially life-threatening situation. Being caught between 3, positioned on multiple sides with limited terrain to work with, is the kind of scenario wildlife experts specifically warn hikers to avoid at all costs, precisely because it removes so many of the standard options for de-escalating an encounter safely. There's no direction to retreat that doesn't involve moving closer to one of the animals, and no way to keep visual tabs on all 3 at once. It took only a matter of seconds for the group to fully register just how precarious their position actually was. Hemmed in on multiple sides in open wilderness with no barrier, no vehicle, nothing to put between themselves and 3 of the largest land predators in North America. And yet, remarkably, that's exactly the point where the story turns out better than it easily could have. Moving carefully, sticking together, and using the open meadow as their way out, the group managed to put distance between themselves and all 3 bears without a single injury, without a charge, without any of the outcomes that make headlines for entirely different reasons. They walked away from Brooks Falls that day with a story, and with footage that's stuck with anyone who's watched it since. A reminder of exactly how quickly a peaceful hike through some of the most beautiful terrain in the country can turn into a situation where survival depends on nothing more than staying calm and finding the one gap in a circle that, seconds earlier, hadn't seemed to exist at all. And those were 6 of the most disturbing videos caught on camera. Which one disturbed you the most? Was there a case you think has a perfectly logical explanation? Or do you believe some of these videos show something we still can't explain? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this countdown, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.